Hello, my name is Jamie Urban. I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report. Today, though, we have another edition of HDPR Live, and I've got a guest on today that I'm really excited to talk to him about his job description. A lot of people are talking about this guy and what this guy's up to. We're going to find out today. So today we have Chris Jolly joining us, and Chris is a freight coach. And so that's probably not a job title you've seen too often in the trucking industry. But today we're going to find out exactly what that is and why, if you're in logistics and freight, you might be in need of a freight coach. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jamie, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you. And, it was great connecting with you the other week and having some initial conversations about this. So,
Before we get into what you're doing today, let's
yeah.
go backwards in time a little bit so we can get to know you. What's your background in the trucking industry?
So from the day I was born, I've been in this industry. My grandfather, he drove trucks. My father drove trucks. Uncles drove trucks. It's legitimately in my blood. And when I was in college, I've worked at a warehouse, so I've loaded trucks. In college, I interned at a couple of large trucking firms in Wisconsin, and then I have been a freight broker for the past almost decade now.
So you definitely got to see every aspect of the trucking and freight business. So that gives you a unique perspective and somebody who's
Yeah.
quite experienced. I'd like to get your opinion on this. How has the freight business changed in just the last few years?
A lot of it's all about technology, and it's been a massive push. I mean, I remember the first load I actually booked, I had to fax the rate confirmation to the driver at a truck stop in Phoenix. And now I mean, you can just text them everything. You can text them a bill of lading. Everything is just so much more streamlined. Like, there's still a lot of work to be done on the technology side within transportation, but I would say that's just the biggest crutch that has been available to us here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when I started in the parts business, I was in a small remanufacturing facility and we were still using like dot matrix printers. And we were actually one of the really advanced companies because we had an ERP,
Oh,
very,
wow.
very basic. Most people were still using Cardex and things like that. So yeah, the industry has changed a lot. When we look at trying to work with companies and help them, we're going to get into the coaching in a
Yeah.
minute, but what do freight companies struggle with the most in 2020? Maybe just putting aside the pandemic, but like from an industry standpoint, what's the big struggle right now?
You know, I, this is something that it's not necessarily a 2020 thing. And I preach about this all the time. It's like, and this is from a freight broker's perspective. It's really developing those core relationships, not just with your customers, but with your carriers and your providers, and not necessarily living on the spot market every day. And I understand that it's difficult to build those relationships up, but that's one thing that I think a lot of brokers are kind of missing the mark on. And it really just makes your life, I don't want to say easier, but it's just more consistent. You're providing that consistent service to your customers, and you're brought issues are brought to your attention ahead of time, as opposed to the day of the pickup or 5 minutes before the pickup. So
It's interesting to me that you say that about relationships, because what I've seen is I've seen a lot of people in our industry are fearful of the introduction of technology because they think that in some way it is going to diminish the value of a relationship. And I just couldn't disagree with that more, because you and I would not be here right now. We never even would have met without the introduction of some great technology. And
yeah,
because of that technology, you and I have met, we've had conversations, we've gotten to know each other. We now have a business relationship. Hopefully that's going to blossom into a
yeah,
friendship. And all of that was made possible by technology. So I see what you're saying from that respect. And I can also understand for that consistency for the actual customer who is needing the freight to be able to rely on their broker, and for that broker to have a relationship so that when things do go wrong, because it's not if, it's
yeah.
when,
It's exactly.
you've got something to fall back on other than just, I don't know, we just met that guy yesterday, right?
Yeah, I found him off of a load board. I just signed him up, and there's no real incentive for them to continue to work with you. And to touch on the technology piece, I'm a massive proponent of it. Kind of like you said, like we wouldn't have been in contact without it. But if you're a good freight broker or you're a good transportation provider, technology amplifies you. It doesn't deter you, or it doesn't have any negative effect on your business. It will only make you that much better, because if you're good at your job, it doesn't matter what other technology is out there. It's there to help you. So that, I'm such a big fan of it, and I'm really excited about the direction of where it's heading within our industry.
I was just having a conversation with one of my clients, and I love quoting myself, but I said that other companies are trying to replicate what they did in an offline world digitally, and we're trying to reimagine
Hmm.
how we do that thing. And I think that's so important for people to remember, is that when we do change things, when we add technology, we add efficiencies, we add new processes, we change the way we do things, we have an opportunity to reimagine how those things are done and to accomplish something much greater than we ever did in the past.
Yes. No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And it's something that, you can't take the old way of doing it and then implement it into a new piece of technology. You can take the old, I would say the old structure of it, because, the bare bones of this industry are never going to change. We're picking up at point A and delivering to point B, and that's it. But you take the good from the old processes, and then your technology will help amplify it, increase that visibility. That's one of the biggest complaints I ever received from my customer is, why can't I see where my truck is? And that's one thing that is, hopefully going to be more of a thing of the past here as time goes on, because it's complete visibility is such from a brokerage standpoint, that's the one separating factor. That's what's going to get you more customers, in my opinion, is when you have that complete visibility.
Yeah, I think of business principles. When I was a young boy, my mom said to me, and I still don't understand why we had this conversation because I was really little, but she said, Jamie, if you learn how a business operates, you will always be able to provide for you and your family. And she was emphasizing those principles that are kind of overarching and that are timeless,
Yep.
and the fundamentals of our business. Like you said, our industry is an awesome industry, and we've got really great people. The relationships, the fundamentals of how we do things, they won't change, but the tools that we use can change.
Yep.
So let's move along here and
Okay.
bring us up to modern day. Now, you've
Yeah.
started your own consulting business this year. What prompted that move for you?
It was, I woke up, it was honestly right before everything happened with COVID, everything. And I woke up, and I wasn't feeling that drive to continue to do what I have done for the last 10 years. And I have a deep love for this industry, and I needed to take some time to really reassess, like, what's the next chapter, you know? And I finally, I started interacting a lot more on LinkedIn and on other social media platforms. And I was getting a lot of questions like, hey, I really appreciated what you said. Can we talk a little bit more? And then my wheels kind of started spinning a little bit. I'm like, maybe it's time. I always wanted to teach, and this was an opportunity that I was like, you know what, I'm going to start consulting with brokers and shippers and carriers on this industry, and the freight coach kind of just came about. I didn't want to put CEO as my job title. And coaching is such a massive part of my life. And it was one thing that I was like, you know what, let's take the simple basic form of freight, slap coach behind it, and let's just roll with that.
Okay, so for some people, the business coaching industry is something they're very familiar with.
Hmm.
The actual person who created the coaching industry is Michael E. Gerber. He created it in 1977 while in a lineup at a McDonald's. And he actually saw the systems of how the McDonald's operation was working, and a light bulb went off in his head that if he created a business system, he could teach that to small business owners, and the birth of the coaching industry was there. Michael and I have gotten to know each other quite well over time. I've had him on one of my other podcasts
Yeah.
about business. Very fascinating to see how that industry got started and where it is today. And I would say that what you've done, where you found a niche that you can, or a niche if you're in the States,
Yeah.
I'm Canadian, so there's the accent coming out. But if you can find that narrow place where you can be the one that the industry looks to, that's a beautiful place to be. But for those who aren't familiar with the coaching process, can you break down for us kind of what it is that you do and how you help your customers?
No, definitely. So my biggest, I kind of live by the saying when you brought up niche, and since I'm in the States here, niche, it's the niches get riches thing. And I think one of the biggest challenges that freight brokers bring upon themselves when they start out is they try and capture too much. They try and say we're the best at everything. We do everything. Just let us be your one-stop shop for absolutely everything. And then I always, and it took me a while to really realize this, like, when you're starting out in a production facility, you're producing one product and then you expand from there. So if I'm a freight broker, and what I try and teach my customers is find that niche market, find that niche freight type. And it doesn't just have to be just dry van freight. Maybe it's just dry van and refrigerated freight. You kind of keep that niche and then start in a region. If you're located in Dallas, Texas, start in outbound Dallas, know that market, become a market expert, and then expand out, because markets fluctuate extremely fast in this. And then there's certain pockets of the country that capacity, you cannot buy capacity. It doesn't matter what you have in the load. But then 100 miles down the road, capacity is extremely loose and you can get trucks nonstop. So it's finding that out so you can bring more value to your customer by having that kind of figured out, as opposed to just calling somebody in Ohio and then your next phone call, they're located down in Florida. Like, how can you really judge those markets? Because they're completely opposite.
Okay, so you've brought so many things to mind.
Yeah, sorry.
One, that's great. No, that's great. So one, the acronym FOCUS, follow one course until success.
Yes.
I love that acronym. Very, very true. Another thing that you brought to mind is one of my mentors always said, you got to learn how to take care of your backyard before you can take care of your front yard and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, by focusing in on this one thing and getting that down, getting it systematic. One of the issues that I think a lot of business owners really struggle with is they're usually good at what they do. So mechanics start repair shops, right?
Yeah.
Truck drivers maybe start a freight company. They know how to do what they do, but then they have to run and manage an entire business. And operating a business is a different job than doing the thing that business does. And so I can see, as a coach for you, you can give perspective to your clients because you've got the background. You can give them perspective that it's difficult to get when you're so far into it. That old saying, right? I can't see the forest for the trees, right? I'm too close to
Yes.
the trees. So all I'm seeing is the 6 trees in front of me. There's an entire forest behind that. And so
Yes.
you can back that up and that perspective up and give them that wide angle, 10,000 foot view. And then you can start from there and then help them go back down to the things they need to do today. Is that kind of the overall process that you're approaching this with?
Yeah. And just keeping that open mindset that I'm not there to change your business. I'm there to enhance your business. And I've been in a startup brokerage firm. I've been in an established corporation, and I've seen both sides of the fence. And sometimes that, a lot of people always like, how do I expand my business? How do I grow my business? Sometimes you have to look within your 4 walls. It's not necessarily anything other than maybe your process is outdated. Maybe there's an extra customer or two within your existing book of business. You just didn't think of a way to capture it. And that's completely fine, because sometimes the best perspective is a fresh perspective. And that was one thing that I always, every time I trained somebody, it didn't matter if they had been doing this job for a week or 10 years, like, I can learn from you. And I wanted to take that approach when I started my own company here. Is it's like, experience is just a number. Knowledge and perspective is something that you can learn from. So it's one thing that I really want to drive home. And that's my message to, any of my existing customers or potential future customers, is I'm not here to change the way you're doing things. I'm here to enhance the way you're doing things.
People, remember what you say last. That's a great place for us to stop today's conversation. If you were to define your ideal customer, just so people listening, if they can kind of self-identify, hey, that's me, how would you describe that customer?
I would say it's the business that, what, you're active in the day to day. You're still selling. You have your own book of business. You're managing a team of 3 to 4 people, but you see the opportunity for growth, and that's somebody who I want to work with, because you don't have to bring me on throughout the year. It's a contract basis. I come in for a week, a day, an hour. Let's talk, and let's build out from there.
You've been watching HDPR Live. I'm your host, Jamie Irvin. We've been speaking with Chris Jolly, who is the Freight Coach. To connect with Chris, just go to the show notes of this episode. I've got a link there right through his LinkedIn. Chris, thanks for being on HDPR Live.
Jamie, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me today.
You can watch our next video, and don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel.